Unless seen in person, the only way your artwork will ever be viewed by people is through reproduction. Given how much thought and care you invested in creating your work of art, it should be just as important to give that same kind of attention to how you reproduce the work digitally. The easiest way to do this is to take your drawing or painting to a facility that has a flatbed scanner. For a fee of around $100, they will make a high-resolution scan of your artwork and make the resulting digital image available for you to download or take home with you on a thumb drive. Another scanning option, if you want to save the money, is to scan your work at home on your own office scanner. Given how small these typically are, you may need to scan sections of your work at a time, then tile the scans together in an application such as Photoshop. The third option is what this video is going to cover, which is shooting your artwork with a camera. Ideally, you want to use a DSLR camera with a normal to telephoto lens. This means that when you look through the viewfinder, the image you see is either the same size or larger than looking at your artwork directly with your naked eye. The reason for this is a wide-angle lens will introduce distortion to the photo and will not be an accurate representation of your work. The wider the angle of the lens, the more distortion will be added to the image. The easiest way to shoot your work is using your easel. Clamping the painting in place, you want to make sure the surface of the work is absolutely vertical. If necessary, use a level and adjust the tilt accordingly. For work that is meant to be seen in the portrait orientation, it's easier to lay it sideways when shooting than reorienting the camera on the tripod. Next is lighting. Ideally, you want the artwork to be as evenly lit as possible. The best way to accomplish this is with a pair of LED fluorescent fixtures. These are inexpensive and can be found at home centers such as Home Depot. Since these aren't meant to be portable, you may need to get creative as to how to mount them to a support that can be easily moved and adjusted. The position of the lights should be off to the left and right sides of your work. They should be close enough to provide an even illumination, but not so close that they create hot spots or reflections. A way to determine the evenness of the illumination is by using a plain white canvas or illustration board as a stand-in for your artwork, then using a spot light meter to check different portions of the canvas. This step isn't critical, but will help ensure you are getting the proper lighting throughout your piece. Placing the camera on a tripod, you will want it to be far enough away from the artwork that the longest side of it is just inside the edge of frame when looking through the viewfinder. Make sure that the position of the camera is directly in front of your work, not at an angle to it. Now adjust the height of the camera so the center of the lens is the same height as the middle of your piece. When you look through the lens, the edges of the artwork should be parallel with the edges of frame. If they aren't, adjust the camera height and tilt angle until they are. Now we need to set the focus and exposure. If your camera has autofocus, disable it and set the focus manually by looking through the viewfinder and adjusting the focus ring until you get a nice, sharp image. Next, adjust the ISO setting on your camera to its lowest setting. For most cameras, this will be 100 or 200. This ensures that the pictures you take will have the least amount of visible grain. Lastly, set your exposure to manual. Then look through the viewfinder and adjust your shutter speed until the meter shows a proper exposure. Since we are shooting at a lower ISO, the shutter will most likely be open for more than half a second, especially if the aperture has been set to provide the deepest depth of field. Because of this, it's a good idea to use a cable release when taking the picture. Even though the camera is on a tripod, pressing the trigger on the camera body can still introduce a slight amount of movement which will result in a blurry picture. Take as many pictures as you like. To be on the safe side, take some pictures with the shutter speed set slightly faster or slower than what the exposure meter is telling you is ideal. Sometimes the ideal setting may result in a picture looking too bright or too dark. In order to get the proper white balance later on, place either a color chart or white sheet of paper in front of your artwork and take a picture. Double-click or drag the image with the color chart and the photo of your painting with the best exposure onto Photoshop, which will open the raw image editor. Optimize the contrast so you see the greatest detail in the shadows and highlights, then select Open. Once inside Photoshop, drag the photo with the color chart on top of the normal photo and make a levels adjustment layer. Using the eyedropper for the highlights in the levels window, select the white square on the color chart or the white paper you used instead of a chart. You have now set the white balance for the painting. All that's left now is to adjust the overall exposure and crop the image. Shooting with a smartphone isn't ideal, but is a viable alternative to using a DSLR camera. Though the camera on your phone is different than a physical camera, the steps we discussed earlier still apply. If your phone has a telephoto lens, use that instead of the other lens options. If your phone has only one lens, then you may get distortion in your pictures. Use a holder for your phone that can be mounted to a tripod. Place your camera so it is at the very center of your artwork. Shoot multiple exposures to allow you the option of choosing the best exposure for your artwork. Crop and adjust color and exposure to create the best representation of your artwork.